Howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Wearing a hat today. Why? Well, let me show you why. See if I can do this. That's why. It's 48 degrees outside. It's a nice toasty, let's see what the temperature is in Unky Joe's Playhouse. And that would be a nice toasty 70 degrees. All these servers in here are keeping me nice and warm. We had our first cold front of the season come through, and it's about right. It's about mid-October. Usually we have our first cold snap here in South Texas right around Halloween. And you can see what our temperatures are going to be throughout the rest of the week. Not getting much above 70 degrees all the way up till Sunday, and they're calling for rain. And I was woken up this morning by the lovely pitter-patter of rain falling on my head. So just wanted to share that with you. Now this video today is in response, or is in addition to, my Windows 10 is faster than Linux video, where I showed you all, and when I say Windows 10 is faster than Linux, I mean in network file transfer speeds. And I showed you my testing results that I got testing Linux, sharing, sending and receiving files both from my Synology NAS and from my Windows server shares, and I showed you the abysmal speeds I was getting. Now, I had a subscriber that offered a wonderful piece of advice to me that might explain as to why Linux was so much slower with file transfers than Windows 10 machine was. So I had a lot of comments on that video. Some were negative, some were positive, and most people were helpful in trying to help me to figure out why this was happening with Linux. But Magnetic Shrimp seems to have hit the nail on the proverbial head. And he wrote, network file share performance when connected to and from GUIs have been a thorn in Linux side for a long while. And I mentioned that in my video. I've experienced that every time I use Linux. It ends up funneling the data through Fuse GVFS file system in user space and incurring many extra memory copies before the data hits the disk or network. And then he further goes on to explain that NTFS and extended FAT file systems also ending up using Fuse. So if both the network share and the disk I/O ends up using Fuse, you're just copying things a bazillion times in memory before it gets to where it needs to go, even more severely impacting performance and burning CPU like crazy. And you notice when I was doing my file copy, the speeds were pretty comparable CPU-wise. I think the Linux machine had a 30 to 35% CPU utilization when copying files across the network, and the Windows box had about 20 to 25. So thank you, Magnetic Shrimp, for pointing me in the right direction. I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole because I did some research on the subject, as you can see here as I replied to him. And I did come across some articles that mention using, in other words, connecting to SMB or CIFS shares using a different program than the file browser within Linux, especially Linux Mint, which uses Nautilus, I believe. However, I still don't know why they use Fuse or GVFS. The Wikipedia article explained what it is, but not why they use it in Linux. So like I said, Magnetic Shrimp got me off in the right direction, and I did a little research, and I ran across an article back from 2016. Now, you remember when I was first setting up Linux, I was using a program called SMB4K to connect to my Windows shares because I didn't know how to use Nautilus or Nemo to properly connect to an SMB share. I did figure that out. But I came across this article from 2016 explaining why people were seeing lower transfer speeds using Linux on an SMB or Samba share or a CIFS share. And it pointed me to use the SMB4K to do my mounting, and it said that my file transfer speeds would be better. So I did a little experimentation, and I want to share that video with you right now. So normally I don't like doing a camera recording of the screen. As you can see, you see stuff off to the side, but I don't want to run OBS. This is running Linux Mint 19. I've customized it somewhat, the desktop and whatnot. But what I didn't want is for OBS to be recording to a hard drive. I have two hard drives in here. One is a 500 gig spinning disk. The other one's a 1 terabyte spinning disk. The one that Linux Mint is running off of is formatted as ext4, and then the 1 terabyte drive is formatted as NTFS, so that I could share it between Windows and Linux. As you can see, I've been copying some files here, but what I want you to see is I'm going to bring up this program called SMB 4K, and I'm going to unmount all my shares on here. But I'm going to show you what a difference this little program makes in sharing your drives. Now, normally you would open a folder here, and you would come up here to the address bar, and you type in the address of your SMB share, and we'll just say mine is MCS Production. Enter it just like that, and it already knows who I am, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna mount this folder right here. And that's a normal way you would mount a folder under Linux Mint. Now what I want to do, I want to go to my video folder here, and I'm going to get rid of a bunch of these files that are out here and leave some of them there. So let's delete those. Yep. And then I'm going to come to my 1 terabyte drive, which is the NTFS formatted drive, and I'm going to delete these files just to give you an idea. Delete. Okay, so now we'll go back to our video drive, and we'll go do our normal copy of Alien series. So I'll choose Alien, Alien 3, and all 4 of these, and I'm going to right click, choose copy, and then what I'm going to first do is copy them to the NTFS formatted drive using a standard copy and paste. And I want you to monitor over here and monitor in here, because it's going to tell you the kind of speeds. Now this is copying from a true Windows server, and so you can see we're not getting bad copy speeds at all. We're getting about 80 megabytes per second, and this is coming from a Windows share off of a Windows 2016 server, so we're getting better speeds than we were last time. And this is Linux Mint 19 with all the updates done on it, so that's what I wanted you to see here, was this in action. So 81 copying to an NTFS formatted drive. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I had some subscribers give me some excellent suggestions, and this is why this comment section is so important to me. This is how I learn things. So I don't presume to know everything about Linux, but I know these are the things that are going to aggravate normal people, Windows users, or even OS X users coming from one of those operating systems to Linux, is the slow transfer speeds. And I'm just trying to show you again what may be causing them. So again, I'm copying to an NTFS formatted drive. This 1 terabyte drive is formatted NTFS. And I'm copying these files across the network, and you see the speed I got was about 80 megabytes per second. Now, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to copy it to the videos folder, which is a folder on my ext4 formatted drive, and I'm just going to do the same thing, right click and paste. And I want you to see if there's any difference in the network transfer speeds. Actually, it's a bit slower. Not much, but a little bit. Now, as you can see over here, it's showing, 80 megabytes per second. Here it's showing about 80 megabytes per second. That's about what we were getting when we transferred to the NTFS and or the EXT, because someone had pointed out, hey, that might be part of your problem. You're copying from from the network to an NTFS formatted drive, and there's stuff magic that happens behind the scenes with Linux, and that may be why your transfer speeds were so slow. So we'll let this finish copying. Okay, so there you go. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to go to my Synology NAS. So I'm going to connect up to that. And then I'm going to mount Unky Joe's Playhouse just under the I don't know what they call this, Conqueror. What is this? What is Nemo? Okay, using Nemo. So there we go. There's Unky Joe's Playhouse. And let me go grab a large, do the aquarium setup. We'll copy this one. So we'll copy that. And the first thing we're going to do is copy that to that NTFS share. Go ahead and paste. Now this is coming from my Synology NAS. And it's a little bit, well, no, it's jumping up and down between 70 and 80 megabytes per second. Now keep in mind, I've got a data scrub going on my Synology NAS, so my copy speeds are going to be a little bit lower. I didn't plan this, but that's just the way it is. Normally my speeds on my copying from my Synology are around 80 to 90 megabytes per second, so this is okay considering that there's a data scrub going on. Alright, now let's try copying that same file to my videos folder on my ext4 drive. And we'll just paste that, and then we'll monitor how it does. And you see we're getting just about the same speeds. Now I kind of expect that because the Synology is based on the Linux kernel, so I think Synology, normally, like I said, I get about 80 to 90 megabytes per second. Even in Windows, sometimes it'll jump up around 100 megabytes, but I just want to be fair in this video and show you copying from two different shares, a Windows share and the Synology share. And you can see my speed over here, CPU impact is negligible. 8 to 12%, memory in use 1.1 gig. And there you go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmount these two shares using whatever the Nemo, the file explorer, and I'm going to open a program called SMB 4K. And what this does is it allows you to mount your shares using a GUI. So I've already created bookmarks for these. So I've got Unky Joe's Playhouse there. I'll just click on it and it should connect automatically. Same way with the videos on MCS Production. So this, in my way of understanding, is using the actual CIFS format. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now, so let me show you what happens. Let's go out here and get some videos. And we'll do the same ones. We'll do our sci-fi videos here. And we'll copy these. And the first place we're going to go is to the 1 terabyte drive under the videos folder. I'm going to get rid of these. Just delete them. And then we'll paste, let me move the screen over here just a bit so you can see that. Let me paste it. And then we'll keep an eye on the copy speed. So you can see our copy speed has gone from, what was that, about 70 or 80 using the file manager, and it's actually less using the SMB4K program. Don't ask me why, it just is. These are the kind of things you see, and I just want to share them with people. Now after we're done copying it to the 1 terabyte drive, the NTFS formatted drive, we'll try copying it here to the EXT drive under the videos folder and see if that makes any difference. Now this is coming from my Windows server, a share. That's where I share these videos, is on a Windows server. Still not getting above about 50 megabytes per second. Again, CPU 12-14%, somewhere right around there. This one CPU is hitting 21. Okay, it's jumping up now. And after I've shown you these results, we'll have a little discussion about what I discovered about Linux and file transfers across the network, and what may be accounting for these abysmal. This is half the normal read speed off of a network. And mind you, I'm reading off the network. I'm not writing to the network. I'm writing to a local drive, to an NTFS formatted partition, or drive actually. The whole drive is formatted as one large NTFS. And I formatted it with using Linux Mint 19. I didn't format it with Windows. All right, so it's copied it to the 1 terabyte drive. Now let's go ahead and copy it over here to our local ext4 formatted drive, and we'll paste, and you will immediately see that the speeds jump up to, what's that magic number right there? Okay, they're dropping down a bit, but you'll see they're going to average pretty close to 100 megabytes per second. Just through using SMB 4K. But what's really odd is you saw that using the regular file browser and connecting up to an SMB share, we had faster copy speeds on the NTFS drive, slower speeds using SMB 4K, and we had about the same copy speed using the built-in Linux Mint 19 file browser, copying to the ext4 formatted drive. So there's no rhyme or reason. Well, I'm just not educated enough about Linux to know why it does this, but I was given some good information from other users, and I'm going to share that with you here shortly, but I just want you to see these results. Now then, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this video while I'm here, because we're gonna now go to Unky Joe's Playhouse. Let's do it this way. I want to make sure we're going through the SMB 4K mount, and we'll go and get that same file. Let's move this over here, and we're going to copy the aquarium setup because it's a good large size video. We'll copy that, and then we will bring it over here to the 1 terabyte volume. Get rid of this one and paste the one from the Synology NAS. Now this is copying to the NTFS drive, and you can see our speeds are a little bit better than they were using the Nemo file manager. They're a little bit higher, but they're fluctuating, and yes, my Synology NAS is still doing a cleanup, or doing a drive scrubbing, but still pretty good copy speeds considering we're copying it to an NTFS drive. It's better than when copying from a Windows server to an NTFS formatted drive. We'll see how it fares when it copies to the ext, to the local drive on the videos folder, the ext4 formatted drive. We'll see how it does there. Proof is in the pudding, as I like to say. Alright, so now let's go to my local drive, the ext formatted drive, and we will paste that same file from my Synology NAS, and you will see immediately my speeds jump up to nearly 100 megabytes per second, even with, well, it's running about 85, but over here it tells you it's running 98. I don't know what to believe, but it says it's doing 100 megabytes. But as you can see, using SMB 4K when copying across the network to a local ext4 formatted drive is much faster It's about a third faster copying from the Synology, and it's a 50% faster than copying from a Windows share. So, and there we go. It's 100 megabytes per second. It just jumped to, and you can see right there for yourself that did a much better job. So there you go. So there you go. Proof's in the pudding, as I like to say. So thank you, Magnetic Shrimp, again for pointing me in the right direction. It helped me get some insight into that. Now, my business partner and I both tried to figure out what GVFS and Fuse are used for. I still haven't figured it out. So maybe somebody in the comments section can explain to me in layman's terms exactly why they use that Google or the virtual file system when using a GUI in Linux. I still don't understand what the purpose of it is, but that could be just because I'm old. But anyway, suffice it to say that if I use SMB4K, I get much better transfer speeds than I would using Nautilus or Nemo if I'm running KDE. And like I say, you saw it in the video, the proof yourself. Also, it also depends on whether you're copying a file in Linux. Like on that unit behind me, my test bed, I had a native ext4 file system that Linux was installed on, and then I had a NTFS share, or an NTFS volume within that same machine, and the copy speeds were slower copying to an NTFS volume than they were copying to an extended 4. But you can see it wasn't consistent. It depended on what server it was coming from. I even had a little bit faster transfer speeds copying from a Windows file server than I did from my my Synology NAS. But keep in mind, Synology is written on Linux kernel, and I imagine that Synology has gone in and tweaked that kernel quite a bit to get better transfer speeds, but they're a little bit less than a Windows file share. So there you go. Like I said, I like to show test results, show you what I see in my lab on my end using Linux, so that you can make a fair comparison if you're deciding to switch from Windows to Linux and what some of the ramifications are. Now, this is a better way of doing file transfer copies, and I don't want to get a whole Linux versus Windows war set up. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is point out to people what they need to know before they jump ship over to Linux, the problems you may encounter, and the things you're going to have to get used to when using Linux, and that is you're going to have to tweak it. Whereas Windows, you have to tweak the interface and make it look the way you want to get your desktop to work. Same way with OS X. With Linux, you have to go under the hood sometimes to get it to work properly. You know, the basic things you take for granted, like file transfer speeds across the network. OS X does not have this problem. In fact, when using OS X, I actually get better transfer speeds than I do in Windows 10. Now, OS X is Unix-based, so you know, they probably, I would imagine Apple over the years has really tweaked the Unix kernel underlying that and made it perform. Otherwise, you know, people wouldn't be using it. But again, not to try to start a Linux war, but this is what you need to be aware of if you're going to switch to Linux. So there you go. We hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please give a thumbs up down below if you liked the video. Please leave your comments in the comment section. Somebody please explain to me what GVFS and Fuse are used for, why they use them in Linux, and if you know why that these file transfer speeds are so abysmal in Linux, why I have to use a third-party application to get the speeds I think I should be getting under Linux. That would all be great and helpful. Don't forget, we take PayPal and Patreon if you're so inclined. We are going to be doing some different things with Patreon. I'm going to release videos to the Patreon community first. They're going to get the first view, as opposed to posting it on YouTube first. And then after a day or two, we get our Patreon subscribers get to view the video first. Then I'll release it to the GP, to the general public. And remember, if you want to be a Patreon subscriber, it's only $1 a month, and that really helps offset the cost of running this channel. It's not cheap doing YouTube videos. It's not cheap buying components and parts to do relevant videos, and I have been purchasing a lot of equipment here lately to do a whole series of videos coming up. So I have some camera. I have the Amcrest camera review coming up. I have some more Hackintosh videos, and on that note, I pulled my last Hackintosh video because I just wasn't real happy with the outcome. So I'm going to redo that video about the unit that's behind me there, that white one, being a Hackintosh. And we're going to do a little bit better cable management on that as well, because I kind of got criticized for that. So blame my business partner. That was his job. So we'll revisit that video, and then I've got some more parts coming in to do some other videos as well. So again, thanks for watching. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And donate if you're so inclined. If not, that's fine too. And don't forget, folks, that we'll see you on the other side.